All right, we are live. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabe Hartwig. I am president of Atlanta Young Republicans. We are the chapter of Young Republicans in the nation, and I'd like to thank you all for joining our first ever live stream meeting. If you have questions, please post those here in the chat, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can. My goal is to wrap this up just a little after 8 p.m., so let's jump right into it. We are joined tonight by, let me mute my mic there. We are joined tonight by Miss Angela Stanton King. And Angela, you've really done it all. You're a reality TV star, you're a best-selling author, you're a community activist, and I understand you even have your own publishing house, but it hasn't always been that way. Can you tell us how you got your own personal story, how you got from where you started to where you are today running for Georgia's 5th District?
Wow, it's a long story, but I'm going to try to wrap it up as quick as I can because I don't want to take up all of your time. But at the age of 5, I guess I was born, right, with the same hopes and dreams like everyone else. Born into this world, wanting to be the best you could be and wanting to live the best life you can live. At the age of 5 years old, I was sexually abused by a family member. And I'll say that's when my life kind of began a downward spiral. From there, I was kind of much like your average troubled kid, looking for love in all of the wrong places, acting out, always getting in trouble in school. And that went on for most of my life, in and out of trouble, in and out of juvenile detentions, in and out of group homes, never finding the love and true guidance that I really needed. At the age of 27 years old, I found myself handcuffed to a bed in Georgia, in a Georgia State prison while giving birth. This was in 2005. It was for a non-violent crime. After giving birth to my daughter and having a sheriff watch, of course, she was snatched out of my arms 24 hours later, and then I was released from prison 2.5 years later after losing my mother and grandmother to death while incarcerated, and I was given a $25 check and a bus ticket and told to go start my life over. Well, when I came home, of course, I had nothing. Those government benefits that I used to receive and had gotten comfortable getting, I could no longer get because now I was a convicted felon. In addition to that, nobody wanted to give me a job. So I had to figure out how to make my own way. After going from shelter to shelter for a few months, I found myself at the doorstep of a crisis center for women and children. And I walked in there with 4 of my children kind of at my wits' end because I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm explaining to this woman all of this trauma that I had been going through with my children and how I didn't believe that we were going to make it. It just so happened that the woman sitting behind that desk is who my godmother is now, Dr. Alveda King. She basically promised me that day. She says, Angela, if you want to get your life together, if you want to get your life back on track, she says, I'll help you, but you have to lead the way. And I said, okay, great. This is the opportunity that I need. She gave me a job working in her office that day. And for the last 15 years, I've been working relentlessly and endlessly, rebuilding my community in addition to myself. Since then, not only did I write my own story and become a national best-selling author, but I also went on to start my own publishing company, which has published over 100 authors in the Georgia area. In addition to creating a book camp, which turned disadvantaged youth in our Atlanta public schools into authors, teaching them the way of entrepreneurship. Not only did I work with Alveda King and her nonprofit organization for pro-life efforts and work in pregnancy resource centers, I also began a job at Georgia at Charitable Connections. And when I worked with Charitable Connections under the guidance of Michelle Uchiyama, we helped to create over 500 nonprofit organizations that still service Georgia to this day. From there, I started paying attention to politics within this last year. And I saw how America was crying out basically about family separation at the border. And I said, wait a minute. I said, well, I remember when I was in prison, and I remember when I had committed a nonviolent crime and my family was separated and my daughter was taken right out of my arms. And I said, hold on, we're getting a lot of misinformation here when it comes to family separation. And I knew back then Trump wasn't president. So I said, something's not right here with the media and something's not right here in the eye of politics. What's going on? So I said, well, what about all of our American families that have been separated? You know, it's not a person in America that's ever been arrested that hasn't been separated from their family. This was just the law. So I started to see through the political games that were being played. And so then I remember when President Trump, he put out a call. He says, hey, if anybody knows anyone that's in prison that's been unjustly treated and you want to advocate on their behalf, come talk to me, tell me about it. So I'm watching and I'm seeing how entertainers like Jay-Z and Meek Mill and everybody's like, oh no, we don't want to go. And I called my godmother and I'm like, Mom, I'm like, let me go talk to him. Let me share my story with the president. I know plenty of people that are deserving of a second chance. From there, we got in touch with President Trump. He received me with open arms. He listened to my story. Not only were we very effective in getting the First Step Act passed, but because of my story, the president made it illegal to chain women to the bed during childbirth. From there, we went on to implement the Second Step Act. This was to make sure that returning citizens had jobs so we could reduce the rate of recidivism. We didn't want people coming home from prison and then going right back because they did not have the resources. So we continued to fight. So I've been working endlessly in regards of criminal justice reform, in regards to pro-life. We fought very hard to defund Planned Parenthood. And on February 18th of 2020 of this year, President Donald J. Trump gave me a full unconditional pardon. And thus you have candidate Angela Stanton now running for political office, taking her years of personal experience on these issues, the education that I've garnered over the years, in addition to the wisdom from working alongside my godmother, Alveda King. And I feel as though it's just time to get involved in the fight. It's time to be a voice. I think what we don't have in Georgia, because I'm here in Georgia, is a lot of young Black faces representing the Republican Party. As a Black woman, it is important for us to stand for life. It is important for us to understand the importance of hand-ups, not handouts. From my own personal story, I understood how Democratic policies kind of had us stuck, it had us stagnant. Because if you're a lifelong welfare recipient, sometimes you don't want to go out and start your own business. You kind of get comfortable. So from my own personal story and my own personal journey, I just jumped right in the fight as a full-fledged Republican, and I'm ready to take on Washington, D.C.
Angela, I love that. That is a truly remarkable and inspiring story. I would say it's probably one of the most unique among Republicans that are running for office. Though I will say you wouldn't be the first reality TV star to be elected to office. I think it's clear that you've overcome a ton of obstacles along the way, but now I think you're facing something different in a challenge in John Lewis. He's been representing the 5th district, which is the district that I live in, since before I was born. In 1987 is when I think he was first elected. And I believe his last Republican challenger did something like 15% of the vote. Can you convince us that this is a winnable race for Republicans?
I don't think that it's going to take much convincing. I think Atlanta is ready for change. For me, necessarily, it's not about, trying to beat John Lewis. It's more so about just picking up the torch and continuing the fight. I think that the injustices that he fought back in the day when he was marching over the Selma Bridge are not the same injustices that we are fighting now. And to be frankly honest, the work that I've done in the last 10 years just in the city of Atlanta alone is probably more work than Mr. Lewis has done in his entire career. I think that it's time for us to be out in our community. It's time for us to be active. And not only that, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. I think that Mr. Lewis has served our community. I think that he's just done it for quite some time. And it's just time for a new face.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree more on that. And you kind of mentioned before, one of the linchpins of your campaign, at least based on my observation of your Twitter game, is your strong pro-life stance. Can you tell us about your views on abortion, and is that an issue that you think will resonate in the majority Black 5th district?
What I see in the Black community is I see a lot of finger pointing in regards to blaming and focusing on what white supremacy has done. And I think it's time for us as a community to have more accountability. One of the first things we have to do is restore the value of life. I'm very, very much so outspoken in regards to pro-life because I understand how Black life has been targeted by abortion. I understand how every time a Democratic candidate goes on stage, the first thing that they say is poor women of color need access to abortion, or poor women of color will die if they don't have access to abortion. And I personally get offended by the assassination call on Black life. I feel as though if we want to restore Black America, the first thing we need to do is begin to restore the value of life. And if we don't value the lives of our own children, we can't expect anyone else to. There are preventative measures. If we don't create the life, we don't have to worry about taking the life. So instead of a party being so focused on helping us kill our children, I want to focus on helping women raise their children.
Love that. I think I think the aftercare part is another important piece, right? Helping them raise the children that they would have otherwise aborted. I'm glad that you're a part of that. I'd like to ask a similar question. Issue I think may resonate, and it's one that you already mentioned a little bit, but you have a strong background in criminal justice. I've read that you founded the American King Foundation, which is all about reuniting incarcerated families. And you also serve on the board of a group called Kemp. Republicans, I think both nationally and in Georgia, have been leading on the issue of criminal justice reform. Can we in the GOP make that message resonate, and how make that message resonate with people in our community who seem to vote lockstep with Democrats in every election?
I think that ball has already started rolling. I think that the majority of us are aware that the criminal justice reform that was just passed was definitely bipartisan, and it was supported from both sides. We all have a need for criminal justice reform because we're all affected by criminal justice reform, whether we believe it or not. So it's better for us to get involved and to be open and willing to receive these people into our community and just make sure that they have the things that they need so that they do not go back. We all have a family member or a friend that has experienced or been involved in our justice system in some form or fashion. When we talk about restoring our communities, and there are so many fatherless children running rampant in our streets, we know that there is a need for fathers to be returned to the home. There is a need for rehabilitation more than there is a need for punishment. So I'm very much an advocate for nonviolent offenders and giving them a second chance to re-enter into society and to be back involved with their families and to help raise their children. Let's take some of that stress off of the community and the government and put it back in the hands of the parents.
I love that message. I guess how can we, as the traditional, they say the Republican is a white party, how can we take the message to Black people that may be inclined to vote Republican?
I think one of the first steps that we're doing now is what you and I are doing on the phone. We're putting Black faces before them. And I hate to kind of play the identity politics game, but we know that's what Democrats do, and that's what they're good at. And I think that when you have someone that is relatable to the people that they can, and we don't have to be related in order to share a relatable experience. But if you see a Black woman that's standing before you and saying, hey, I'm a proud Republican. I'm post-abortive. I bought the lie before. Yes, I have had an abortion, but every life is a gift from God. Yes, I have been to prison, but look at my life. Look at where I am now. Look at how President Donald Trump cleared my name, and now I can stand before you today, a brand new woman. Look how I've completely rebuilt my life. I think that that's what America is all about. If we have people like Ilhan Omar that can come from Somalia and make America great for them, then by all means, we can make America great for our own citizens.
Well, that's great. You kind of segued right into my next question. You mentioned that you were recently pardoned by President Trump. Can you talk about your relationship with the president, kind of how your case rose to his attention, and what it felt like when you heard that you were going to be pardoned by President Trump?
So can you repeat that? Because you went out just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me move a little bit closer. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah. I said that you kind of mentioned that you were recently pardoned by President Trump, and I was hoping that you could talk about how your relationship with President Trump, how your case rose to his attention, and kind of what it felt like when you heard that you were going to receive a pardon from the president.
One of the things that I could appreciate about President Trump is from this is my own personal experience. President Trump really wants everyone around him to grow, and he wants to see us reach our full potential. I think that when President Trump first heard my story, he was moved. Not only was he moved by my words, but he was moved by compassion. He was moved enough to actually act. President Trump is someone that's willing to listen, and he's also willing to reason. The day that I found out I got a pardon, it was the day before my birthday, February 18th, 2020. I was actually on set getting ready to film a show when my godmother called me, and she's like, "Oh, the president just called. He said he has your pardon on his desk and he's getting ready to sign it." I'm like, "Oh my God, is this real?" And then by the time I got to the airport, someone sent me a link from the White House and my name was up there with everyone else's. And I was like, the best feeling in the world. I started hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I was just almost in disbelief because it's like, even for returning citizens that come home that have served their time and paid their debt to society. And I had been working in the community endlessly for over 15 years. It was something that was definitely deserved. But even when I went to fill out an application or every time my name was run, my criminal background would still come back. You would still see that charge. So it's almost like I wasn't truly free. And so when my name was finally cleared, it was just the most amazing feeling in the world because it's given me an opportunity now to be able to give back and do so much more for this country and for these citizens in regards to my own story and how I can influence them and make change. And I'm just so grateful.
That's really incredible. We hope you're successful in that. I want to transition to something a little bit different. I don't think we can really have a Zoom meeting these days without at least mentioning the present circumstances with the virus and everything like that. Recently, I've seen liberal outlets like New York Times, Vox, the New York, running stories that racism may be at play in the sort of disparate impact we're seeing that coronavirus is having on Black versus white communities. Can you talk about that media narrative, President Trump's response to the outbreak?
For me personally, I didn't necessarily buy it. And I know my campaign manager is watching, and I hope that this is safe to say. But I pay attention to facts and I pay attention to numbers. And I was watching how when it all originated over in China, and then it went over to Italy, and then it came here, and it's like all of a sudden it gets to America, and the virus is only attacking Black people. So it just never really made sense to me. And I had been following on Georgia.gov the actual coronavirus caseload. I mean, and how many people had been tested for it, how many people tested positive, how many people survived, how many people actually passed away. And when you looked at the numbers and you heard what was being reported from the media, it just did not add up. So to me, in my mind personally, when it comes to the liberal left, it's always something. If it isn't the Russian collusion or if it isn't the impeachment hoax, it's always something. But I'm just glad that Georgia is slowly opening back up and people are able to get back to work and get back on their feet.
We'll talk real briefly about Brian Kemp and his response. He's taken a lot of heat in the media and here in Georgia for being one of the first states to open up. I mean, do you think that was a good move on
well, as a small business owner, I'm going to have to say yes. If I set the politics aside and just be the small business owner that I was before I began to run for office, especially someone that has literally put their all into creating a business and being able to sustain themselves. I think that all businesses are essential because small business owners, this is the way that they provide for their families. And because the death toll was such a small amount, less than a fraction of a percent, you can't allow the entire economy to crash over such a small number. In addition to that, I'm strongly against being dependent on the government system. And at the rate we were going, you were going to have so many people back dependent on that system that I felt like it was time for us to begin to reopen, get back out in the atmosphere, begin again interacting with each other, opening up our businesses and continuing life as we had.
Angela, thank you for joining us this evening. I would encourage everyone to visit your campaign website. I think it's StantonKingforCongress.com. We wish you the best of luck in your race, and we hope that you'll join us again as Congresswoman Stanton King. Thanks to all of you guys for joining our YouTube live stream. Stay healthy and keep America great.
Thank you guys so much. Please support. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.